Secure your life in 90 days. Secure your life in 90 days. And I'll begin this meeting by giving you the story of Jean-Henri Fabre, a French entomologist who conducted a series of experiments on processionary caterpillars, so named because they follow each other, forming a never-ending cycle. And what the experimenter did is to bring a little flower pot and put some food, a delicious meal known by those caterpillars. They could smell the food. They could sense the food. But each and every day they went round and round, following the lead caterpillar, convinced they were approaching their goal to get some food. In about 7 days later, they all dropped dead out of starvation and exhaustion because they confused activity for accomplishment. They confused processes for deliverables. They confused stories for results. And how often do you and me confuse activities for meaning and accomplishments? We are busy, walking around and around, but no evidence of something achieved. Sometimes loitering in the regrets of the past, and at times cut by the routine of the present. So much so, in the words of Kiyosaki, you're caught up in a rat race. And this happens, and this is the reason we are here today. And I want to ask you at this early stage, before I proceed, if you will, if you can, could you remember 5 things you've accomplished in your life? For those who are young and perhaps in college, maybe you want to remember what you've accomplished in the last 3 days. For majority of us, could you just remember what you've accomplished in the last 5 years or 10 years? Please, if you have a pen and a piece of paper, I would like you to assist me by just writing 5 things that you've accomplished that make you happy. Some of you, it's a house. Some of you, it's getting extra education. Some of you is getting a family. For some of you, it's buying land. For some of you, it's raising up your children. But can you remember something precise that you've accomplished in your life? Today, I want to take you through 7 elements of this momentous subject. And the first thing I want us to explore together is why set goals. Why set goals? Number 2, why 90 days? Number 3, the big picture. Number 4, I'll look at something I'm calling PAM, Personal Accountability Matrix. Number 5, I'll look at winning values. And number 6, meaningful associations. Number 7, and the last one, I have something I want to propose and recommend to you. I'm calling it today my life star. My life star. So let's start the very first one. Why set goals? As you look at that list, why set goals? There's no doubt in my heart, from my many years of speaking in this country and beyond, the majority of the people in any audience I go do not have clearly written goals. They are not even convinced why they should have goals. And so at this early stage, I want to sell you the idea why you need to set goals. Goals do work, whether it's for nations or institutions or organizations or individuals, goals do work. In 1950, a war-torn, devastated Japan, a nation that had lost a higher percentage of its young men to war than any other nation during the Second World War, the only nation on the face of the earth to have experienced nuclear warfare, as a result, a nation with a higher percentage of persons living with disabilities because of the nuclear reactions, they decided we are not going to whine. We are going to set goals and rebuild our nation. And in 1950, they set a decade goal, and they said, during this decade, we want to be the #1 country in the whole world in the production of textiles. They achieved that goal. In 1960, the Japanese set yet another goal, and they decided, government leaders sat together with political leaders, administrators, and set yet another goal and said, during this decade, we want to be the #1 nation in the whole world in the production of steel. Please understand, Japan has no iron ore and no real natural resources. In order to do that, they had to import iron ore thousands of miles away, put up steel mills, and re-export steel products in an already very competitive market. But the Japanese did not look at what they did not have. They looked at what they did have, a willingness to work. And goals help you to stop whining. Goals help you to see and seize opportunities. Goals help you to overcome obstacles. In other words, goals help you to be solution conscious, not problem conscious. The Japanese became solution conscious and they achieved that goal. In 1970, the Japanese set yet another goal. And they said during this decade, we want to be the #1 country in the whole world in the production of vehicles. And ever since that declaration, not only do they have the largest motor vehicle plants in the world, but I bet the odds are high if I go to the car park right now, the Japanese models dominate. In 1980, the Japanese set yet another goal, and they say, during this decade, we want to be the #1 country in the whole world in the production of computers and electronics. And all you need to do is to go to the video lab, and the computer world today in the hardware industry is dominated by Japanese models. Goals do work. Whether it's for nations or families or individuals, I'll try to persuade you through many examples that goals do work. Born 322 BC, died 384 BC, is a man very few of you may have ever heard about. His name is Demosthenes, arguably the greatest orator of all time. His father died when he was 7 years old. And in those days, the uncles were left to take care of the estate. But the uncle who was in charge not only squandered the inheritance, but large portions of it he decided to register in his own name. Regrettably, Demosthenes was a stammerer. He was a shy boy with low self-esteem. He figured out that he has to make a choice. He was an orphan boy. Either he will accept the situation as it is, unfortunately, that's the plight of the majority of people, or he will resolve to change his plight. Let me say this at this early stage. Every so often I talk to people, I hear people complain about my father, about my mother, about my ex, lack of college degree, this and the other. This might be a little bit hard for some of us, but maturity is that day when you realize you're responsible for your destiny. That day when you stop complaining and blaming anything or anyone and always say, if it is up to me, it is up to me. I am the only reason for my success, and by default, I'm the only reason for failure. The moment you have someone or something to blame, you are yet to grow up. Demosthenes scanned the environment and decided he's going to change the situation despite the fact that he was born a stammerer. He committed himself to study a degree in law. That was not an easy task. Then he wrote an entire speech entitled Against Arphabus. That was his uncle. He recited it over and over and over again, 15 years in a row. And then just to check his skills, he decided to put sad pebbles, they were living near the seashore, in his mouth and practice speaking with pebbles in his mouth. Tradition has it, he even went a step further than that, and he began running uphill to enhance his breathing abilities. And on his very first public appearance, he astounded everyone who was in that public debate in a courtyard, and he not only regained his inheritance, but he ended up with a bright political career. By the time he exited the scene, he left 61 orations, a book with 54 poems, and 6 letters in his name. When you achieve goals, they boost your self-esteem. When you achieve goals, they boost your self-image. When you achieve goals, they raise your confidence levels. In the words of Zig Ziglar, you can't make it in life as a wandering generality. You must become a meaningful specific. If you discipline yourself to do what you ought to do, he continues, the day will eventually come when you'll be able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. As a Form 2 boy, I came across a scripture that changed my way of looking at life. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse number 10. Whatever your heart fights to do, do it with all your might. For in the grave where you're going, there is no work, there is no labor. Whatever your heart fights to do, do it with all your might. I'm a firm believer that God has a good intention for each one of us. I'm a firm believer that God has no evil plan for any human being. His intention for each of his creation is success. Whether you are there or not is a different story altogether, and it's up to you. Let's go to number 2. Why 90 days? Why 90 days? Life is not divided into semesters. You got to divide it yourself. I've given the subject a lot of thought, interviewed a lot of people, and I can almost tell you today, I know where a lot of people dropped the ball. If there is a group of people who achieve almost every goal, it is school children, especially primary school children, and I'll tell you why. Whether they're in class 1 or 2 or 3, if we are going to use the 844 system, 8 years away, they know they're going to sit for a national exam. That's an 8-year goal. In fact, the child is not seeing 8 years. They see themselves as a pilot. They don't see any obstacles unless the mother, the father, and the neighborhood suggest the obstacles. Children don't know barriers. So they see their life very far. Then somebody plans how they have to pass their class 8 exams. Then every year, there are very clear objectives. Every term, clear objectives. Every week, clear objectives. Every day, clear objectives. Let me tell you this. Every lesson, there are objectives. Every single lesson. In the Kenyan system, we have academic objectives. We have health objectives for the kids. We have extracurricular objectives for the kids. We have their health goals in mind. In high school, this continues at a lower scale. Then many of you found yourself in colleges and universities, and you had some freedom that you're not being used to. And suddenly, you began to miss out some few goals. Maybe you are able to achieve academic goals because at the end of the semester, somebody had to check whether you're achieving your goals. But then I'm concerned with the day you left college, the day you left the university, and suddenly, no one is going to check what you're doing after 3 months or after 6 months. And let me tell you what happens. 2 years after college, you discover somebody is driving who was in your same class. And maybe you got a first-class degree. And he got a pass or a lower, whatever he got. And the difference is, you left college when people were setting goals for you, but you are not conscious. And here you are in unfamiliar waters. You know, I'm a supervisor at graduate level, and I can see 2 or 3 of my students here. And I can tell you this with integrity. I have not found students struggling in this country at postgraduate studies at all in their coursework. The problem begins when they have to write their thesis. Not because it is necessarily more challenging, but the primary reason, there is nobody setting the goals for you. There is nobody giving you a structure. There is nobody coming to check your progress. You are left to decide. And many of us don't have the capacity to do that. True for academic goals, true for health goals, true for family goals, true for financial goals, true for your mental growth. Many of you, when you're in high school, perhaps you did set books, 3, 4, or 5. After school, some of you listening to me here have never finished reading a single book. They have the capacity to do it, but nobody's checking. Nobody's checking. You see, every single year is divided into 4 seasons of 90 days each. And the reason we want to convince you about setting goals for 90 days is simple. It's Nelson Mandela who once said, if you speak to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. If, however, you speak to a man in his own language, it goes to his heart. If I told most of you to set goals for the next 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, few of us can visualize. But many of you right now can visualize what they are going to do for the next 3 months. But let me ask you a question. And this specific question, I would like you to lift up your hand. I promise I'll only do 2 times. I don't ask a lot of questions for you to lift up your hand. I don't want to feel like you're in class. But let's just play a game here. You're in the world of imagination. I've come here with a clear voucher that I want you to go to Honolulu for a 2-month holiday, fully paid for, not only full board, but all inclusive, whatever you find in the hotel, including the spa. We have the air ticket, we have the holiday paid up for you. How many here would be confident to say they will be willing to board the plane tomorrow for that holiday? We have a couple of people, and they're just sincere, they're genuine. The rest of us maybe are playing politics. You know what those ladies are telling us? They don't have a clear plan for the next 2 months. And that could be many of us. There's nothing so serious that I can't stop. That's what happens. When you don't have very clear goals, you are distracted by anything that comes. Any offer, you pick it up. You pick it up. That's why we want to suggest to us, we look at the value of time in the right perspective. For those of you who follow me on social media, you might have seen something that I posted, and it is not my original quotation, I must confess. Putting time in the proper perspective. If you want to know the value of 1 year, as the student who failed the final exam, if you want to know the value of a single month, as the mother of a premature baby, if you want to know the value of 1 week, as the editor of a weekly newspaper, if you want to know the value of 1 day, as that mother who is a wage earner, Anna, and she has 6 children that she feeds all by herself. If you want to know the value of 1 hour, as the lovers who are waiting to meet. If you want to know the value of 1 minute, as that lady who missed the flight. By the way, a true story. When we were going for our holidays, we met a lady at the airport who actually missed her flight. And she was there with 4 children. If you want to know the value of a minute, ask the person who missed the flight. If you want to know the value of 1 second, ask the person who missed the accident. If you want to know the value of a millisecond, ask the Olympic silver medalist. You know, putting time in the right perspective. I'll tell you my observation. I've been doing a lot of business meetings, and this is a general view I've seen in this country. We overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years. So we build castles in the air of the amount of things we are going to achieve in this 1 year. But we don't have a good sight on what we could achieve in the next 10 years. And this introduces me to my next concern, number 3. The big picture. The big picture. And to resolve that idea of looking at life for only 1 year, I want to sell a new concept to us today, why you must have one clearly defined purpose. We call it a lifelong goal, a clear mission for which you live. When you have a clear lifelong goal, ladies and gentlemen, I put it to us tonight, it acts as a magnet. First, the bigger the goal, the stronger the pull. Secondly, as a magnet, it keeps you fixed and focused on the lifelong goal and distracts you from all other things that are passing by. They may be good things, but they are not good for you. Warren Buffett says it this way: if it is not the only thing to do, don't do it. Number 3, when you have a lifelong goal, it defines your character. No wonder New Year resolutions don't work. Because people decide, from this January, I'm not going to smoke. From this January, I'm going to do exercises. From this January, I'm going to reconcile with someone I lost. But there is no conviction that is supporting that. What defines the character is a lifelong goal, your end product. What will come out of you dictates your daily habits, which in turn boils down to your character, what you stand for. It has to be crystal clear. Let me give you an example from different fields of endeavor, whether this makes sense to you. 29th of May, 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary managed to reach Mount Everest, 8,484 meters above the sea level. Many people had tried before. To date, every single year, many people die attempting that mission. He even appeared in Times as one of the most influential 100 people of the last 20th century. I was given that honor of God, sir, by Queen Elizabeth. But he spent his entire life, starting with little hills to more steep hills, to climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, to trying that mission. And believe me, resources always follow people who are clear with their goal. Imagine this. He's only popular for one thing, mountain climbing. Many of you here perhaps may have come across the name Howard Hill. I don't know whether it rings a bell to you, but Howard Hill decided and identified his mission as archery. Archery is the game of bow and arrows. So good he was that he won 196 times successfully without any interruption. A record which by the time he died in 1975, 4 years later, has never been broken. In 1971, he was admitted into what they call the Alabama Hall of Fame because of his skill in archery. Today, many schools in the United States are named Howard Hill. Not only did he die with a lot of fortune, and he only did one thing. He identified one thing. One thing. And he spent his entire life pursuing that one thing. Barack Obama, Nelson Mandela, and other successful politicians decided what they're going to do in their 20s. And this is the challenge I want to set to us. Identify your lifelong goal and then spend your entire life pursuing it. Spend your energy, your effort, your everything else pursuing this one thing. I read somewhere, this one thing I do. Philippians 3:13-14. This one thing I do. Would you believe this? Even the Lord Jesus would get a lot of temptations, especially after feeding the fellows. I mean, 5,000 guys getting free bread. And they wanted to make him king. He would refuse. Every human being would be tempted to pick power. Power has its place that we cannot deny. But he said, for this cause was I born. To this end did I come. This one thing that drives me. You see, you will never go beyond your lifelong goal. It is your ceiling. You'll always operate beneath it. You must spend every breath, every second, every energy, every resource pursuing that one thing. Everyone you know, they are not known because of the money they made. Pick any name at random. If I were to pick some names that you all know, can I do a little exercise? Let me do this. I think for my message to come home, I'm going to pick people at random. I'm going to pick this row. All of you, 5 of you. Please come.